I'm Tracy Nicholas, and my co-host Tanya Carwyn and I are passionate folklore practitioners. To us, folkloring is more than a podcast. It's our commitment to help you connect with your roots and awaken the wisdom within you. Welcome, everyone. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about New Year's folklore and some of the traditions around it and some of the many fun folkloring things that you can do for your New Year's celebration. So, Tanya.
Yeah.
Have you been folkloring this week, and what have you been doing?
Yeah, I have. As we're recording this, it's the day after Halloween. So my focus was definitely on Halloween crafting and getting that all together. And one of the things that I did for the first time that I felt really good about it was that I carved turnips instead of pumpkins. Like we grow our own pumpkins, but it was not a good pumpkin year for us. So we had a few beautiful big pumpkins and a few kind of malformed little pumpkins, but there wasn't really enough pumpkins for everybody to get into carving a good, beautiful jack-o'-lantern. But we have a good neighbor who came by the day that on Sunday when we were going to carve our pumpkins with a big load of turnips from his garden for us. And so instead I was like, well, I will carve turnips. And I remember doing it once before and it being really difficult and unpleasant. But this time I used a spoon gouge for making wooden spoons, and it was just beautiful and awesome. And I made one little like jack-o'-lantern with a scary face, and then I made a little lantern with like stars and moons and stuff on it. And they're hanging like in my kitchen with a candle in it, and they're awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's fun because turnips or sugar beets or things like that were the traditional thing that was carved in Europe, because until, the 1700s, we really didn't have pumpkins.
Right.
Tracy, what about you? Did you folklore this week?
I did a very fun thing. There is something called, well, it's referred to as the National Seance in England. And basically what happens is at 9:23, 26, there's a particular moment that you go, there was a movie that was released back in the 90s, and it came out and it was shown once, and then it was so scary and so many people complained that their children were being frightened that they didn't air it again on television. But now, of course, it's on the internet. And at the time at which they had originally aired it, on the 31st of October, people get online and they watch the movie all at the same time, and they talk about it, and it's really campy. I can't imagine why people even complain about it, because it's so ridiculous. But it's just fun that all of these people are joining together for this particular story and experiencing it together. And you find other people talking about it because they, doing hashtag National Seance, or the movie's called Ghost Watch. And it's just weird and fun to be experiencing that at the same time as all these other people. Now, of course, for me, it was not 9 o'clock at night. It was 4 p.m. But it was still, it was a lot of fun to just be part of that community.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. How fun. I'd never even heard of it.
It's a lot of fun, and you can find the movie online, and it's just this very strange kind of community experience.
Yeah, how fun.
All right, so now moving forward from Halloween, let's talk about the new year and what some of the folklore around the new year is, and what some of the folkloring you can do. First of all, why is the new year on January 1st? And the short answer is it's not necessarily, depending on who you are, where you live, what your religion or spirituality is. It can be different days. And even for those who traditionally celebrate on December 31st, January 1st. It hasn't always been that either for within Christianity and the calendar that we know today. So January is named for Janus, who is an ancient Roman god. And Janus is often pictured with two faces, one looking forward, one looking back. And so was the god of beginnings and endings, and this liminal kind of figure, doors, gates, passages, transitions. And so that was sort of why that January Janus, and the first day of every month was also referred to in Janus's honor. And at one point, December 25th was thought of as the solstice. And so they started the new year on the first day of the next month. That's why they chose to do it, because the solstice happened, and then it was like, okay, now it's a new beginning.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see that they still based it on like an astrological phenomenon. Most, like, wherever you go over the world, like New Year's, whenever New Year's is for your culture, it's always based on either an agricultural calendar or a astrological calendar.
Right. And I think that when you find some of the different days that the new year starts, some of those are based on a lunar calendar. And I think why it's different days, and some calendars, like, they have a different number of days in the calendar. So let's talk a little bit about those. Let's see, in early medieval times, most people regarded March 25th as the new year. And that was the Feast of the Annunciation. And William the Conqueror decreed that the year begins on January 1st. That was in England, but then England later went to March 25th.
And then they switched back again.
Exactly. So in the late 1500s, they restored it to January 1st. And then that was in the Roman Catholic Church. And then most of Europe started to adopt it after that. So then we have other New Year's. The Chinese New Year is in January or February. Celebrations last for a month. And
that's based on a lunar cycle, yes?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
And let's see, in Tibet, it's in February. In Thailand, it's celebrated in either March or April. And the Japanese have a 3-day celebration, which sounds awesome to me. I wish we did this, from January 1st to the 3rd. And in the Jewish faith, they have Rosh Hashanah, which usually takes place in September. And that's and
that is after the harvest is in?
Yes.
Yeah, so that is similar to in Northern Europe, where Samhain was often considered the beginning of the new year.
Which is crazy to me, because it feels like endings, it doesn't like the new, I feel like what feels intrinsically to me like the new year is when spring starts and there's new growth, but it doesn't seem like there's no, I couldn't find anything about anyone who celebrates in the spring, which is
well, other than Europe in the Middle Ages,
right, of course. March, so that's true.
I don't know. Like, I know in like from Celtic backgrounds, the whole idea, and I think that is kind of for pre-Christian Europe in its entirety, the idea that things start in the dark. The day starts at sundown, and the new life begins in the womb in the dark. So I'm assuming it's something like that. But yeah, you would assume that then it would start at, like, everybody would have their New Year celebration at Samhain, because that's the beginning of the dark half of the year. Right.
Yeah, that does make sense. I hadn't thought about it that way. It just feels like everything's going to sleep and quieting down. And so it doesn't feel like a fresh beginning. It feels like when life is starting to spring forth. But part of that too is that it's a process. It's not like life doesn't just appear one day when the first snowdrops start coming up. It's all a cycle. And
Right.
I remember I typically sleep with my windows open. And one day I was awake and it was pre-dawn and the birds were singing. And I'm like, why are the birds singing? And it's still dark out. And
Yeah.
I had this elder pagan gentleman say to me, it's a process. It doesn't just like boom and it's up. It's gradually getting lighter. And I think that that's the way that the year starts. Is it's gradual. It's sleeping, of course, because we're in the cold, in the dark, in the snow. But it's like life is still there underneath it all, and it's going what it needs to, I guess.
I also think that it has something to do, the celebration of New Year's in the middle of the winter has something to do with it coming on the heels of or being kind of the same as winter solstice celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
That, back in the day, I think it was probably all one, and maybe it wasn't necessarily looked at as, here's Yule or midwinter, and now a week later we have the new year. It was probably all just like one and the same.
Right. And, honestly, even though it is the dark half of the year, it's still like the solstice is still the day where you start getting more and more light every day.
Exactly.
And so
that, that makes sense. That's the beginning of the new year.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, so let's dive into some of the traditions that you might see. And as we were just talking about the weather, let's talk about the weather. There's one tradition that talks about, what's your new year, what's the year going to be like? And it has to do with the wind. And there is definitely debate on whether you do this at sunset on New Year's Eve or at dawn on New Year's, probably debated by the people who are partying on New Year's Eve. Unless they're still up. Maybe it's the people that are still up.
They're still up.
Yeah. So, okay. So I found a little poem that goes with this. So I'm going to read it. If New Year's Eve the wind blows south, it betokens warmth and growth. If west, much milk and fish in the sea. If north, cold and storms there will be. If east, the trees will bear much fruit. If northeast, then flee it, man and brute.
That's awesome. I love those little weather folklore. There's often little rhymes to go with it. It's great.
Yeah, I thought that was a lot of fun. So that's the wind. If you happen to feel like going outside on December 31st or January 1st, which I typically don't. So that's one. Then other weather related stuff. If there is one belief that's around the first 12 days of January.
Yeah.
Whatever the weather is like on each of those days represents a month. So January 1st represents January. January 2nd represents February. And so whatever the weather is like on those days, if it's wet, then it's going to be, that month is going to be wet. Or if it's so it's an interesting take on, that, because depending on where you're living, like obviously day 6, it's not going to be hot, right?
Right. But it could be mild and sunny, at least. I have heard this exact same one, but then for the 12 days of Christmas. So starting on the 25th, going to the 6th,
right,
going through to Yep.
Yep, that makes sense. And speaking of 12, this was a very strange one that I found.
Yeah.
What you do is you get yourself 12 onions, and somewhere between 11 p.m. and midnight on New Year's Eve, you cut off the top and then kind of hollow out the middle. And you have to line your onions up in an east-west direction. And put salt in each of the onions.
Yeah.
And then just leave them. And however much water is drawn out of each onion by the morning, the wetter the corresponding month will be in the coming year.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
What immediately came up for me, I grow my own onions, and there's no way I would sacrifice 12 of my onions for this.
I know, right? Can you
I would
imagine?
figure out a different way. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we can do it like the Greeks do it, and they take their onions and hang them in a bag outside their door.
Uh-huh.
Good luck. So I guess we could do that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Or if you threw a party, you could say everybody bring one onion or something like that.
Right. Yeah. For me personally, I am not a fan of doing any kind of spell work or charms or anything that wastes food.
Uh-huh.
And so
Yeah.
I'm very careful about when I'm doing that kind of thing. It just feels wasteful.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm big on offering food, but I also don't do a lot of other things with food than eat it.
What do you do with the offerings after when you're cleaning it up? Do you then eat it or do you?
No, ours go outside
Mhm.
and they always get eaten by something.
But maybe not so much in the winter when it freezes up.
Oh, even then, like there, raccoons and possums, there's lots of little creatures out here that hide but don't necessarily hibernate around where we live.
Mhm, mhm.
It's mostly in the fall and the spring that I'm trying to be more careful with it because of bears. I don't want to, like, we have bears around. I just don't want them to get used to being fed right here.
Yes,
So,
of course.
but yeah, in the winter they're sleeping, and in the summer there's plenty of food for them. We never see them in the summer. They're fall and spring.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, I leave it out and it gets eaten.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about this yesterday because I was thinking about all things New Year's, and I was cutting up an onion. And I did remember, I typically what I do with the scraps like that, which obviously not offerings, but just with the food scraps, I have a running bag in the freezer where I've
Uh-huh.
got, the ends of the onions and stuff to make vegetable broth and
Yeah.
chicken bones and things like that. So anyway,
Yep.
all right, back to New Year's. Let's talk about noise because for whatever reason, this holiday is all about the noise.
Yeah, can I take it from here? Because holy moly, growing up in Holland,
Yes.
that is what it's about. And if you don't believe me, you can find YouTube videos of New Year's in Holland, and the fireworks are, I mean, truly out of control and scary. But since I grew up with it, it's like it doesn't feel like New Year's until it's crazy noisy. And it's not fireworks like, oh, your town might put on a beautiful firework display like they do here for 4th of July or so. It is, I mean, there might be a few people with some nice fireworks, but mostly it is noise and smoke and craziness.
Wow.
Yeah, we have, yeah, like little ones that just go give a loud boom and nothing else, no fire, no nothing, just lots of noise. And then there's a favorite. They're called Gillende Keukenmeiden, which means a screaming kitchen maid. And that's just like, and it's just like this horrible screeching noise, and it's everywhere. And it starts, you're not supposed to set up fireworks until midnight, but it starts a couple of days in advance where kids start, they get their hands on fireworks and they start doing it here and there. But like at midnight when the bells start to ring, then in Holland there's still a lot of churches that ring their bells, so the church bells will ring, and then at the stroke of midnight it's absolute pandemonium that breaks loose. And it gets to totally ridiculous levels where in certain bigger cities, in certain not so savory neighborhoods, like people set tires on fire, and it's crazy. But even in the tiny little town that I grew up in, it's like people are throwing fireworks off balconies. Like, you got to watch where you're going.
Wow.
When I was really little, I wasn't allowed out after midnight. We just, watch from the windows. And what is interesting is that everybody knows you're scaring the old year away. It's a very folkloric, sympathetic magic thing. Like, everybody knows that that's why you're doing it. You're scaring the spirits of the old year away.
Yeah, and I think that's true of a lot of different traditions. Fireworks, firecrackers, noisemakers. We always had noisemakers when I was little, and we'd spin those around at midnight. And it's, a firing of guns and all of those things to banish the old year, the bad spirits, to allow for the good luck to come in the new year. I think that it is a sympathetic magic, where if you're making noise and being crazy and the pandemonium that you described, that's very common to scare away the bad spirits. And you mentioned the bells for the church, and looking at other New Year's, like we talked about Rosh Hashanah earlier, and that always begins with the sounding of the shofar, is to proclaim God as King of the universe. So and even Rosh Hashanah is described in the Torah as a day of sounding.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, which I don't know if it's noise, I guess sometimes it is noise depending on who's singing, but the Robert Burns song, the Old Lang Syne, and you see it in movies. I don't know that I've ever actually experienced anyone singing it.
Oh, really? Because we always do.
Really?
And yeah, you got to stand in a circle and cross your hands in front of you and hold hands with the person next to you. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we always do. Yeah.
I guess, back in the day when it was like my party days, I would be, like everyone was just cheering and saying if you had someone to kiss. But these days I haven't gone out on New Year's Eve in many, many years.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I don't go out the day before Thanksgiving. I don't go out St. Patrick's Day, and I don't go out New Year's because it's amateur night out there.
Yes, for real. Or Valentine's Day. Stay in for Valentine's Day.
Yes. Well, Valentine's Day is just because of the expense, because it's.
Yeah, totally. That's amateur night. Yeah. There is an interesting one that I came across in Denmark. Apparently, you go out at night and you throw plates against your friend's front door to banish spirits. And the really funny thing that I thought was that it's kind of like a popularity contest. Like, the bigger the pile of shards on your front step the next morning, the more popular you are, which is funny.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I don't want to be that popular.
Oh, see, I think that's so sweet to go and banish the spirits for your friends. You're not just focused on yourself, but you go and banish the bad spirits for your friends. I think that's great. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think people would understand it here.
and again, the waste of it.
Yeah. I have a really fun thing that happens in Brazil. I had a boyfriend a long time ago who ended up moving to Brazil, and he told me all about that. He on I guess after midnight, so in the middle of the night, people go to the beach and you have to you throw flowers in for, I believe it's Yemaya, or however, like a ocean goddess, and you have to jump 7 waves for good luck in the new year.
Wow. Well, that would not be happening in Lake Michigan for me.
Right. Yeah, no, same. But what is interesting, and maybe I'm skipping ahead a little bit. No, actually, this is perfect. The notion of water being involved in New Year celebrations is actually not unusual. And so another example, in Holland, we do the Nieuwjaarsduik, where on New Year's Day, you go swimming in the North Sea, which is ridiculously cold in January. And it actually happens quite a bit all over Europe, cold dips and swimming out in the ocean or in natural bodies of water. And it's from the research that I've done, originally comes as a purification ritual.
Sure.
Makes sense. You're getting yourself all clean for fresh and clean for the new year. And that is, maybe I will this year, but I don't usually go in water.
Yeah, but you can also take a shower or a bath. And again, as long as you're being mindful of why you're doing that, and thinking about letting go of the old year and moving to the new year, because people go jump in a frigid cold lake doesn't mean you have to.
Right, exactly. Another thing with purification, which is that, I don't know if this is traditional in any other sense than that's just what I grew up with, but New Year's Day is when all the Christmas decorations come down, and it's a big house clean. The tree goes out, everything, all the Christmas decorations go away. The house gets a good, clean, fresh start for the new year.
Yeah, I always do that too, mostly because I like it. I like decorating for the holidays and all of that. And but by the time New Year's Day has come, everything feels so cluttered, and I just can't stand it anymore.
Yep.
And I don't understand people who leave their stuff up for weeks and weeks.
February. Yeah.
It would make me crazy. It already kind of makes me crazy. There's this moment when everything is decorated for Halloween, and Halloween comes and goes, and I'm like, I got all this clutter, and so I pack everything up, and then a day later I'm like, oh, maybe I should think about Christmas, and I'm like, no, it's too soon. Don't do it.
Right, exactly. We do the day after Thanksgiving. Is always our decorating day. That's when we go get the tree and put it all up. Or sometimes we have the tree before, but yeah, we don't do Black Friday or anything like that. We decorate for Christmas. Since I didn't grow up with Thanksgiving, it's not such a huge deal for me. So I'm usually like super ready for it.
So let's talk. So we've talked about water and cleansing, and that's kind of a nice transition to food. And there are lots and lots of different folklore about food. And the one that I found most fun, although I'm probably not going to do it, in Spain, you have to eat 12 grapes during 12 strokes of midnight. So like each of the grapes again represents a month, and you've got to, like, while the clock is chiming, you have to eat these 12 grapes, and then you'll have good luck all year.
I might do that. That sounds fun.
I don't know. I like, knowing me, that would be it. I like Blanche Dubois, I'd choke on a grape, and that would be how I off myself.
That's funny. Well, here in the South where I live, we definitely have the Hopping John tradition, which we definitely do follow. And it's funny it's pork, Hopping John, and some sort of greens. So it's usually like collard greens or turnip greens or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, and it's funny, like just a regular grocery store, like have displays like right up front, like the last couple of days of the year, where you can just pick up whatever pork and whatever, like black eyed peas. And so pretty much everybody I know does that here. And so do we.
Yeah, we don't. I absolutely have heard of that, but I've never really done that. It up north, it's not a thing. So there isn't really anything that I can think of around food that is sort of native to where I grew up. You're just hanging out on New Year's Day. I don't know, watching football, I guess.
Oh, that's interesting. Like no traditional foods?
Yeah, no, I really, it just wasn't a thing. I mean, we'd have, a big meal, and oftentimes we would have ham, but that was just, it was just the family, and it just was because I don't know, that's what my mom decided to make. It wasn't anything
Yeah.
that was sort of universally done.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Another thing that I grew up with is that's on New Year's Eve, but you get to eat the leftovers the next morning. There's this thing called olibola, which means oil balls, which is yeast risen dough balls with raisins in it, deep fried in oil, with served with powdered sugar. And it's kind of a hassle to make them, and you don't really see them. You see them in December, like you can usually buy them in the grocery store. They have little stalls out where you can buy a bag of olibola. A lot of people make it at home. I sometimes do it for New Year's. It is a bit of a hassle, but it's delicious, and it is like a prosperity thing, right? So much oil, so much sugar,
Right.
dried fruit, so you eat it as to bring in prosperity for the new year.
Sure, and I think that that's a lot of the food that, are part of these traditions is about prosperity. It's about abundance.
Absolutely.
And those do sound delicious, by the way, although you
They
ought
really
to be
are.
out of thinking about making them.
I mean, it's not that, like, I'm just not a fan of deep frying anything. Like, if I could bake them, that wouldn't be such a big deal. But like, I'm just not a fan of deep frying anything.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know that I've ever, well, I worked at a hot dog and hamburger stand when I was in college, so I did deep fry stuff then. At home, I
Right.
don't know that I've ever deep fried anything at home.
Yeah, right. Like, I really don't, other than this.
Yeah.
I guess sometimes we do meat fondue, but that's it.
Well, maybe you can turn your sights to Ireland, where they had pastries called bannocks, and they would have buttered bread in order to, again, banish hunger, right?
Yeah.
And weirdly, they would also bang loaves of bread against the walls to chase away evil spirit and allow good luck and bounty to enter, which I think is hilarious.
So crazy. And I'm just wondering what the thoughts behind that are. Like, what does the bread on the wall, like, I understand the noise and all that, but why bread?
Yeah, I wonder if it's a way, like you have enough bread that you can just,
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
And then let's see, we've got in like India, Pakistan, there's rice for prosperity.
And also, interestingly enough, in Scandinavian countries, which can't be a very old tradition, because I'm sure they didn't have rice there in maybe Middle Ages, but earlier. But yeah, you see the rice puddings and all sorts of rice dishes in Scandinavia around this time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good reason to eat rice pudding.
Yeah.
And there is other traditions around, like you were talking about greens earlier. I was surprised to hear that in parts of Europe, they're like cabbage and greens and stuff is a traditional food. And part of that is because those are the last foods to be harvested.
Right.
And
interesting.
Yeah,
because in my garden, like, we always get the greens from the garden, whatever we have. But in early January, late December, early January, the kale and the collards and the turnip greens are still just doing fine in the garden.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely not the case where I am.
Right. Yeah.
And I also think it's interesting that in Italy, it's traditional to eat a lentil dish. And I think that there's a lot of symbolism in the shapes, because donuts and bread made in a round shape. It's a coin shape, or even a shape that is coming full circle. So you've gone through the whole year. Now you're back at a beginning again. And so I think that the round shaped food is traditional in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, about Italy, I also read, yes, the lentils, and also sliced sausage like
Oh, sure.
sliced in little rounds so that it looks like coins. Yep.
Sure. Oh, this one was an interesting one. In Poland, they eat pickled herring because
Uh-huh.
the fish is silver, like, a coin would be.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's what you would have in your larder at that time too. Your herring would be pickled.
And this one is fun. In Germany, they would eat little, they're called sugar pigs, and it's just a
Uh-huh.
little pig-shaped candy.
Yep.
For whatever reason, I'm kind of imagining them as Peeps, but they're probably not.
They're not. They're not a hard candy. They're a little bit like God, what are they like? Maybe a little bit like a not chocolatey fudge. In Holland we do it too, but we make them out of marzipan.
Okay,
We make little pigs out of marzipan.
fun.
Yeah. And what is interesting is that pigs just seem to feature quite extensively all over the place with around the New Year's, like whether you're eating them or you're displaying them, and even somewhere I think they take their pigs for a walk on New Year's Day.
Oh, I want to take my pig for.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
That's that must be hysterical.
Yep.
So now maybe we should move on to the thing that so many people do, not everybody. The drink. What are the traditional drinks? So obviously, lots of people drink champagne.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really find much on why champagne, other than, I don't know, it feels festive.
Yeah. I also wasn't able to figure it out.
Yeah. But there is also wassail. It's,
Yeah, it's Saxon. It's was hail, be whole.
oh, okay.
Yep.
And do you make that?
I have in the past. I'm not the biggest fan, but I have in the past. Yeah.
How do you make it?
Well, apple cider and different. God, I think sometimes there's like a million different recipes, but it all pretty much starts with apple cider.
Got it. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
done mulled cider and mulled wine,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know that I ever, specifically did that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing also that they do around New Year's, specifically with the wassail, is that you go and bless your apple trees. So you go and you sing to your apple trees and you pour them a little wassail. And I have done that. I have two little teeny tiny crab apple trees, and they do get a little splash of apple cider on New Year's.
Yeah, and I've definitely, heard people like, oh, we're going with sailing, right? But that I think is kind of morphed into from, where they would go to the orchard and sing and make noise and stuff to bless the orchard. But now when I hear it, yeah, when I hear it, your two trees, when I hear it referred to, it's when people go like door to door to their neighbors to sing to them. And I guess the Scottish version of this is a spiced hot pint.
Yeah, is it beer?
I think so.
Ugh.
Yeah, it does not sound good at all, but hey, when in Scotland, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the drink that you have, then that's what you would warm for the winter, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
a lot of places they like just drink their beer warm.
It sounds like this is like heated though with spices.
Yeah.
Like more like a tea. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about other things to do, other ways to folklore, because if we are not going to go wassailing, obviously lots of people get into like large gatherings. They'll go to where they're dropping the ball in Times Square, which I hear is not really all that much fun. I think that a lot of
So not a New Yorker in their right mind. I lived in New York for a long time. Not a New Yorker in their right mind goes to Times Square on midnight. Maybe not. Surely there are some, but all the people I hung out with are like, no way am I going there. That sounds like a nightmare.
I had a couple of friends who lived in New York, and and they moved there in their very early 20s. And they went, and what my friend described it as, when the ball dropped, the crowd kind of surged forward, and he got literally picked up off his feet and moved forward with it. And he felt like he had no control. He was terrified. And yeah. But I mean, there are lots of places in, I'm not going to be able to say this, Trafalgar
Square. Yeah, I think you did good.
So Trafalgar Square in London, and lots of other places, and people go to parties. Obviously, that's a big deal. And again, we're back to Scotland. These Scottish people, I love them.
I know.
I'm a quarter Scottish, so. So they have bonfire ceremonies where people parade around and they're swinging these giant fireballs on poles, and I don't know, and drinking hot beer, I guess it sounds. They also have these things called tar barrels.
I've heard of that.
That's
crazy.
It's very crazy. They carry around these barrels of tar lit on fire, and that's in Scotland and Northern England, and it looks terrifying to me.
Yeah, I've seen videos of that. It is crazy, but also very cool. The same, like in Scotland, again, they're big on their New Year's celebrations, and they even have a special name for it called Hogmanay. And I think maybe also in Ireland sometimes they call it that. But from the research I did there, like one of the big folklore parts of Hogmanay is first footing, where the first person that comes to your door portends the future of the year.
Right.
Usually it means like a tall and dark man means a good year. And I found out that comes from Viking times, when there were Viking invaders. And if a blonde guy showed up at your door, it was probably not good news.
No. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my research on the first footing, I got to the same thing you did with a tall and dark person. Also, that you don't come empty-handed, that you have something, even if it's only a coin or something. It's, you want whoever is coming in to, again, be representing abundance. But I did also hear, there was a couple of places where I saw that they referred to first footing, but talked about it as the first step that you take after, the new year should be on your right foot. For luck.
That's the same as getting out of bed on the right foot. It should always be your right foot. Doesn't matter which side of the bed you get out on. Your right foot should always hit first.
Interesting. Yeah. Which, is so hurtful to all the lefties that we know.
Or the people who get out on the left side of the bed.
Right. I'm going to have to pay attention to that now.
Oh, I know. The minute I read that, I was like, oh, and then now I do. It's, now it's just I pay attention to what foot goes out first. And I do get out on the left side of the bed. So I have to, make sure.
Yeah, I get out on the left side of the bed too, so I'll have to pay attention. But in addition to letting your tall, dark stranger in, there's also a tradition that you open your doors and windows to let the old year out, let the new year in. And I imagine that started in a place that has a much warmer climate than where I live.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And we talked earlier about cleaning and how that's just, cleaning up the Christmas decorations, cleaning the house in general, starting fresh and clean. But I read this many times. I found it in Italy, but I also heard mention in South Africa that they throw things out the window, like old furniture and so it's, that just the symbolism of a clean start, a fresh start, and getting rid of the old. And so there's two major themes, right? There's good luck and abundance in the upcoming year, and sort of a fresh start that we're seeing through a lot of these things.
Yeah, and doing a good job clearing out any negative energy or dirt or old stuff. So like that whole nature abhors a vacuum. if something is filled, you can't put more in. So get rid of all the stuff that you really don't want anymore so that there's room for luck.
Right. Except for your cabinets, because you should fill your cabinet with food and your wallet with cash so you enjoy abundance upcoming.
Nice.
Yeah. I did find this is really hysterical, and I'm definitely doing this year.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
In Latin America, they wear a particular color underwear. So if you wear red underwear on New Year's, that equals romance coming for you. If you wear white, that is peace. And yellow equals wealth. So depending on your underwear choice for the day.
Yeah. What if you want all three?
Like a pair of underwear with all three colors, or three pairs?
Yeah, or what if I'm looking for both, for romance, peace, and wealth in the new year? Do I wear 3 pairs of underwear, or do I have to find a pair of underwear that has all 3 colors?
I like to imagine you wearing 3 pairs of underwear.
I know, right? Like, that's exactly where I went.
Well, I guess we'll never know. We'll have to make those decisions for ourselves. And the next thing I wanted to talk about is divination for the new year. I think, a lot of people want to say, oh, what's my year going to look like? And people, obviously, there's so many kinds of divination. You can do it in any number of ways. But there's one that maybe you want to talk about.
Yeah, I came across in so many different references to divination on New Year's, but pretty much the majority of them were related to either melting tin or lead, and then dropping it in water, and then it solidifies when it drops in the hot water, and then you interpret the form, the shape that the lead or the tin has taken, and that is related to Saint Sylvester, who is celebrated on, I think, the 31st in like Italy and Serbia, parts of Germany, related to him, and like all over the place. And it's interesting because it's also something that you see in reference to Samhain quite a bit, that kind of divination.
Okay, that's very interesting. I like that kind of divination where you're interpreting the shapes, because I do think, and we've discussed this before, I think that a lot of divination is a backdoor into your subconscious. And I think that the shapes that you see and what they represent to you are very meaningful.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Although I don't know that I'm going to be melting tin or lead. Maybe I can do it with wax. Can I do it with candle wax?
Yeah, you can totally also do it with wax. That I've never done it with tin or lead. Like, I have no idea how well tin melts. Lead, of course, is easy to melt, but like, I don't really want to be around melted lead. But yeah, you can totally do it with wax. Wax tends to have a bit more of a erratic shape, once you put it in cold water. Lead, I don't know about tin, but lead does kind of have I don't know, it tends to set in like softer, rounder, maybe easier to interpret shapes in from what I've seen.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't want to be breathing in anywhere where lead is melting. That seems like a really bad idea. Now, in Norway, when you get up is important. So the earlier you get up, the better your luck.
And so it's an interesting thing because a lot of people will be partying or at least staying up late on New Year's Eve, and then getting up late on New Year's Day. But yeah, so in Norway, the earlier, the less late you get up, the better luck you'll have in the coming year.
Yeah, when I was young, I would go out on New Year's Eve and stuff, but I don't quite get it. Like, who wants to wake up feeling terrible in the new year?
I just have all these memories of going out on New Year's, and just I'm always so very cold. Like, that's my memory from New Year's Eve being out. Like, it's always so cold. And like for the last, I mean, at least since I've had kids, so what, like 2 decades, it's been like parties at people's houses or at our house.
Yeah, I tend to just like stay at home, make a really nice dinner, and be quiet and kind of meditative.
Uh-huh.
But then I often, fall asleep on the couch
Yeah.
and am woken up by the fireworks going off.
Yep. Yeah, we often have one of the kids will throw a party here or so. So we'll often have a bunch of rowdy teenagers around. But yeah, my husband and I usually just retreat to our bedroom.
What, you don't want to hang out with rowdy teenagers?
I mean, they're so awesome in small doses. Like I cannot, so there was a party here last night and my husband and I both had this oh, these kids are awesome. And holy moly, it's so much energy. Yeah.
Okay, so other things. What you found something about Belgium?
I did, which is just the sweetest, cutest little thing. In Belgium, the farmers on New Year's Day morning, they will go out and go wish the cows and the other barnyard animals een zalig nieuwjaar, which means a happy new year.
Nice.
And in Estonia, I always also like this one, and it's clearly also related to abundance and prosperity. But in Estonia, the aim is to eat 7 meals on New Year's Eve, the day, the December 31st. So again, in a sympathetic, magic way of making sure that there's always enough food in the coming year.
I'm sorry, is that not a daily practice for most people?
Estonians and hobbits.
Okay, I guess I identify as a hobbit then.
And then the very last one that I have on my list is in Luxembourg, pigs and chimney sweeps are considered lucky. So if you come across a chimney sweep, which I don't know how often people do anymore, but chimney sweeps back in most places in Europe back in the day were considered lucky. And I believe it's because they occupy a liminal space between Earth and the gods, right? With their chimney. So in Luxembourg, they make pigs and chimney sweeps out of marzipan.
Nice. I think it's interesting. We talked about not stepping on your left foot. The other thing that you should not do is eat any kind of lobster, shellfish, because the lobster, when it travels, it moves backwards and symbolizes having setbacks in the year ahead.
My goodness. So, that's funny. My mom and I, when I was a kid, we always had crab for New Year's.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not great.
No. Hey, but you made it this far, so I guess it'll.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
All right. So what about some of the gods, goddesses, spirits?
Oh, that's right. Let's see. So what I came across, I mentioned him earlier, Saint Sylvester. You see him, so I guess he was a martyr. He was actually a pope, a very early pope, the 300s somewhere. And he his death day is December 31st, and he's celebrated around that time. And it's all intertwined with New Year's traditions in, as I said, like Serbia, Herzegovina, Czechoslovakia, also Italy, also parts of Germany. And there's a couple of traditions surrounding that day. One is you take your pigs for a walk, which is just so adorable. I wish I had pigs to take for a walk. And the girls, unmarried girls, needed to finish their work, which usually spinning, by St. Sylvester Day, or they won't get married in the coming year, which is an interesting parallel with Mother Halle traditions in Germany, Holland, where there was a spinning taboo for the 12 days of Christmas. So you had to get all your spinning done before Christmas Eve, which I found that an interesting parallel, which makes me want to look at it closer and see how far back we can track those spinning taboos or those handwork taboos that need to be done by a certain day or else. And then you mentioned in the beginning, Janus, like the two-faced God looking forward and looking back. Mm-hmm. And then, there's a lot of winter goddesses, including Mother Halle, who are associated with this time, not necessarily with a January 1st sort of modern New Year's Day celebration, but that whole sort of winter solstice, New Year's celebration season. where, yeah, as I mentioned, there's the spinning taboos. There's things that I definitely do every year, but I do it for like around Christmas. I make a braided bread for the braids. That's a traditional Mother Challah bread for her braids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, like you find a lot of winter and midwinter spirits and gods and goddesses that definitely have a lot of crossover to New Year's celebrations. You're finding very few purely New Year's gods and goddesses. And like, I think the reason for that is that celebrating New Year's on January 1st is just not such an old tradition.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because we do have, they're not gods, but we have the characters of, the old man as the old year, the baby New Year. And so I think that that's kind of our symbolism around it for, a more modern day.
Right.
Yep. So let's get to the big one, the big New Year's thing, the resolutions.
Yep.
And I am not a huge fan of making resolutions.
Same.
Because it feels like if you're trying to develop different habits, better, habits, it feels like that's kind of a slow, gradual process, not I'm only going to eat kale and work out twice a day. It doesn't work like that. So I've not really kept that, I don't really do that so much, but like I said earlier, I do like to reflect on, what has passed in the old year, what's coming in the new year. And I do like to sort of write out the things that I wish hadn't gone the way they did, or the choices I wish I hadn't made in the past year. And I write those out, and then I burn the paper that it's written on to sort of let go of that regret. And moving forward, I know that I don't want to be behaving that way anymore.
And then you've really reflected on that, and it's no longer in the shadow. You're actually like consciously aware of that. So it's much easier to avoid.
Yeah. And, I pay attention to what my habits are. And I think that if you are going to create goals for the year, it goes back to creating any kind of goals that you have. They should be specific, they should be measurable, they should, have a time limit and be realistic, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to, lose 30 pounds by the end of January.
Yeah, you better not. That would not be a good idea. Yes. Yeah.
And so I think that you have to pay attention to what you can reasonably do, and what people have to go to work. What's realistic for what your time is in what you want to do different in the year. Right. And so I always think of it more as either like what I'm letting go of and what I'm trying to bring in. And I think of it more in general terms rather than I want to do X, Y, and Z. But if you have specific goals, that's great. Just make sure that they're not amorphous.
Right. Exactly. What is interesting for me is that process for me takes place between Christmas and New Year's, like that week or 6 days or whatever it usually is. That for me feels like the ultimate liminal space when there's not, when I often also have the time to really reflect and make these plans and yes, like set some new things in play. And then I feel like if and when I do that, January 1st, I can hit the ground running.
Yes, absolutely. And it is a very liminal time. And it's weird because, being in the US as we are, it's, everything's go, go, go all the time. But there is a lot of quiet in that week between the two holidays. Yep. A lot of people take time off work, and people have been focusing on family, and the big Christmas is, it's over, and all of the work leading up to that is over. And so it is a time that is focused on, a quieter moment in time. And
Uh-huh.
that's pretty unusual that a lot of people around us here are doing that all at the same time, because that's not the
Right.
case in any other point of the
Yeah,
year.
absolutely true.
And I've been thinking a lot. I've heard two different things, and they've kind of gone together in my mind. When you're thinking about your habits and what you want to do differently, the first is 100 days. And if you are thinking about changing a habit, is your life going to be better or worse 100 days from now if you do this thing consistently?
Ah,
And that really helps me, focus on better eating choices, better working out choices, that kind of thing.
uh-huh.
And the other
Yeah.
thing is 10 years. And, maybe it's not going to affect you day to day if you're, I don't know, drinking every day or, not working out, but it's going to show up in your body in 10 years.
Uh-huh.
So, and not sleeping enough, or, any of the choices that you make around your health, it'll catch up with you. And so, you're never going to be younger or healthier than you are right now.
Right.
So maintain
Yeah.
that.
That's an excellent, I had not come across that way of thinking about it, and I really like it.
Mm-hmm. So, do we have any other thoughts?
No, just wish everybody a very lovely new year, and do your best to welcome 2024 in a helpful, pleasant, loving, folkloric way.
Yeah, I hope that we gave you guys some ideas of some stuff you can do, some easy stuff to do, and making it part of your day-to-day life. And again, Happy New Year. As always, thanks for listening to Folkloring. If you liked what you heard, please consider giving us a rating and review, and don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. If you have any questions or comments, or would like to suggest a topic for a future episode, please email us at folkloringpod@gmail.com or message us on Facebook or Instagram. You can find Tanya at Folklore Home Companion on Instagram, where she writes about European folklore and traditional life. You can find Tracy at the Folklore Podcast as the theater, film, and storytellers correspondent and producing the Stories from the Hearth podcast. Hope to talk to you again soon.